a wealth of knowledge about music and the music business. And so
Mhm.
I am just grateful to have you in my corner. Tell us about you, what you've been doing, what you're up to.
All right. Yeah, definitely, Simone. I always start off with just telling people that I'm a fan. I've always been a fan of music in all forms as a consumer, someone who loved to go to concerts and events. And one of my earliest things was being a member of the Wesley Methodist Youth Choir in Grantstown Wesley Methodist Church. From there to the Bahamas National Youth Choir. Um, from there, Logos Bookstore in the Harbor Bay Shopping Center, working there in retail, music retail specifically. Um, the Caribbean Gospel Music Marlin Awards with Kevin Harris, working with Manifest, um, was doing with Sounds Records and things like that. RIP, Bess, Belle, JoJo,
Yes.
of course. Um, KLR Management Group, started
First
my own
single out
company.
with Manifest. Remember that? My
Sorry?
first I got my first single out with Manifest, and
That's
you
right.
you got me a you I think you submitted my music. I got a Marlin
Yeah,
Award nomination, yeah, for reggae.
yeah.
You knew that, Simeon?
No, I didn't. Good job, y'all too. Good job making waves. I'm
Yeah, I
here for it.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just about supporting people and recognizing the gift in people and doing what you can to support. That's number one. So a lot of things I've done has just been volunteer basis, like the Marlin Awards. I was volunteer. Um, Anything needed, sweep floors, mop, man tables, be a gopher, and as a result of that, looking back, like I have decades of experience across with my own thing with Island FM, with the radio station Island 102.9 FM, over a decade and a half with them on radio, almost 20 years with the Marlin Awards, my own company, KLR Management Group, where we helped artists from 10 Caribbean countries get over 340 nominations across 3 US based award shows: Florida, Georgia, Alabama, won 25 awards. We did all that in a 2 year period, and then COVID happened. I got married. It's a lot of different things, and this is just yes, Vivian, yes, bro. And one thing I always loved about MenSpeak, I got to talk about MenSpeak right quick, is it was an environment where you could be critical, but you could also listen and learn.
Yeah.
And man, how you put that show together, man. Listen, man, Simone, nobody had a show like that. You had the food demo, you had recording artists, people performing live. You
Yeah,
had,
magician.
yeah, man,
Oh,
musicians.
modeling and all at one point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
one they did.
show.
The only time I ever
Yeah.
modeled for anyone is when you asked me to do that, and I was like, oh Jesus, I can't believe I doing this.
Uh,
You know?
Yeah, we gotta go back. We gotta do an in-person something. We gotta
yeah,
do
we
some
gotta go back now. That's enough of this computer
virtual
love.
thing. I know. We
Yeah.
gotta go back virtual,
Oh,
in
and one
person.
more thing. All of this was before the manosphere and red pill and all of these other people that are out there talking about men's issues and men's rights and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of anger and frustration that's poured out from the male perspective. But ladies have always had a platform, even if it's on social media, where you could just say, man, all men are dogs. And next thing you know, 20 women piling on, and man, sick of these niggas,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they all piling on. But for the first time, you have men who actually have the opportunity to share their side of things. You're hearing a lot about marriages and a lot about divorces and about child support and access to the kids. There are all kinds of different things that um, the consensus that's going around is that marriage is no longer a good option for men.
yeah.
Through the legal system, it's not a good option, or just the uh, the legal aspect, the legal aspect of it. It's all these things. But the interesting thing is, before all of that really blew up, Men Speak was doing it.
It's true. It's true. I never
and
thought
doing
about
it from a holistic perspective,
that. Mm-hmm.
not bashing anybody, not calling anyone outside their
About
name,
bashing. No, no, no. This is
you
not a
know?
bashing show. You don't bash
Yeah,
men and we don't bash women. Because the whole
right.
thing behind MenSpeak is about how do we all get along better? How do we understand each other from each other's
Hmm.
perspective? So
Yes.
it was really initiated to help women understand men because, like you say, women
Hmm.
always have platforms, women always talking,
That's
but
true.
we were not listening. And I was guilty as
Always,
well.
always, always.
Always, always talking and not
And
enough
don't
listening.
listen. Hey, it hard like rock.
Boy.
I'm telling you. And
Yeah, boy.
can you believe, like, with all the shows that we have done,
Hmm.
every time without fail, there was always at least one woman who would say, y'all ain't talking the truth. Even though
Yeah.
you were saying, this
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
is how we feel. And they would
yeah,
still, like, be
Boom.
so
yeah,
adamant, like,
yeah, yeah, for
that
sure.
ain't no
Yep.
truth. Come on,
Yep.
the man telling you.
You know something. I think there's a couple of things, and what I said earlier is definitely, how you see things and where you're headed. And as December rolls in, for some
Hmm.
people, New Year's are a time to reset,
Hmm.
refocus, get a new start. But you should always be in movement. And
Yes.
there's a
Always.
couple of things that I want to make sure, and you said it very well. I've deemed 2023 for me is a year of dope connections and deliciousness. Dope
Hmm.
connections and deliciousness. So it covers the food side of it, and it covers the connectivity.
Yeah.
And so you said it as well. I think I think we should go back to in person.
Yeah.
I also
Hmm.
think we should look at broadening the spectrum of delivery for this show,
Yes. Yeah.
because
Hmm.
things like podcasts, uh, probably a two-part series on some television show, etc.
Yeah.
Because I think also people need to understand, we talk a lot. We talk a lot. In the
Yeah.
Bahamas, you you have people who are chronic radio show callers.
Listen, I can
Yes.
tell you.
Like
Yes.
they know who can call, when they can call,
Yes.
and they make the rounds.
Yes,
And
they
so
do.
people will talk, you know, in those settings. But like you just said, it's absolutely impossible for somebody to say you hurt my feelings, and you say no,
Hmm.
I ain't hurt your feelings. How you could tell me what
Impossible.
to do with my feelings?
Exactly.
And that's one of the things that we do. But I'm gonna sit back and take all this in tonight. But what I really want people to remember is this: let's stop fighting each other and start fighting the problem.
I agree.
Let's stop fighting each other and
Exactly.
start
Hmm.
fighting the problem. If you
Exactly.
really think about that, in so many aspects of our existence, our life, personal, professional, every aspect, that would solve so much. Political, we would be on the road to success. But we
Yes.
so busy fighting one another.
Right.
And as long as two or more people get it, you know what that means. The
Yep.
possibility to tear up somebody exists. So,
Exactly.
and that's why I think a lot of people nowadays are so intimidated by relationships, all
Hmm.
ships, friendships, intimate ships, relationships, partnerships. People are,
Situationships.
yeah,
Yes.
we're intimidated by ships because everybody is so afraid that once you bring in an outside person, there's going to be failure.
Yeah.
But if you commit to having a dope relationship, a long lasting relationship, what
Hmm.
scares me the most nowadays, Simone, and you see this a lot in dating and relationships.
Hmm.
People who get mad at you fast. Like people who ghost people, I think you're immature. I don't care what nobody
Yes.
says. I
Oh,
think that's
Yep.
absolutely
we need a
immature
whole
to ghost
show
somebody.
on that.
Yeah,
Can we
that's
do a
Mm.
show on that?
that's like you
Yep.
super immature because you know the things what I see people is talk, but they can't like somebody for is crack me up.
Yep.
Because you can't spell online.
Hmm.
You using I wrong, I'm wrong, here wrong, there wrong. I can't spell, but you can't write and talk, and you ain't doing nothing.
Okay.
Right? People that say there's no such thing as perfection, but everybody looks for perfection in the next person.
Yes.
And until we stop that, we can always be having these conversations.
Yeah, it's
And
true.
only Anna being the bruiser, one can be married in the whole world.
Hey, hey, Simeon, and to throw in something with that, right? I was having a conversation with someone. We were talking about literacy, and we was going all over Google just trying to find information because it was just a conversation, and it sprung out about what was the literacy rate of the Israelites,
Mm,
because based on their setup, the priests were the ones who were responsible for sharing the word of God, and
right.
it just and, were they able to read the Torah for themselves and so on and so forth, and to get deeper into it and so on and so forth. And this one thing we came across said that they had one of the highest literacy rates in the world at 20% of the population. That's low today. So we have a higher literacy rate today than people did then. We have access to infinite streams of information, and yet we have no sensible way of communicating with each other and resolving our differences. How is that possible?
Well,
You know?
communication is that's another show in itself. Because people
Mm,
think they be communicating, but they be talking to their head. They'll say
mm.
100 words in their head, but only verbalize 2. But that's a
Yes.
different
Yeah.
conversation. People don't like for me to
Yeah.
talk because I tell the truth and people is get mad.
Yeah, but some of these things we need to start talking about because it's
But we need
ridiculous.
to finish talking about it and start putting it into play. Because
Yeah,
guess
we
what?
do.
I tell people all the time, I will never buy a self-help book. I will never go to a self-help course because I think we need to stop going to them and stop behind the bush because everybody know what they're supposed to be doing. We all know
Some
what we're
do it,
supposed
some
to be
don't.
doing. We know.
Yeah,
We just
some
ain't doing
refuse.
it.
We just refuse. Some
Mm.
people
We
refuse and
just
they think
ain't
with
doing
the
it. You trying to tell me anybody over 25, you ain't know right from wrong. You ain't know in this day and age when somebody say, oh, I was busy. You ain't serious. You ain't
No.
serious. In a 24
Yeah.
hour day, you was busy. You gone home and you was online for 9 hours, but you was too
Mm.
busy? Man, please, come from around here.
Yo, this is a blue
Truth is,
tick
you just tell
generation,
me the
bro.
truth.
just tell
You
the
It's a
might
truth.
as
blue
well
tick
just be
generation.
honest. Be honest with yourself, be honest with the
Mhm.
next person,
That's
so
all.
we
Don't
can move in the direction that is going to be mutually beneficial. But
because
when
you hurting
people
my
say
feelings
they
anyway. You know.
that that saying you too busy, and people who go hunting for red flags, they're my biggest pet peeves. People who go looking
Describe that.
more for red flags than they go for you. You get 1,000 red flag and only one green flag hiding in the bush. Man, come on, man, something wrong. And some
Now,
people,
what you mean by that, Simeon? Sorry,
what
when
you
you say
mean?
hunting for red flags, break that down,
People
because
who
I don't
people
follow.
who are determined to prove their beliefs
Mm,
of what is wrong, and they focus more on that than anything else. I'll give you an example.
hmm.
You could have until you buy a Honda Accord, the same
Yeah.
make, model, and color as
Hmm.
yours, you'll
Yeah.
think ain't none of them on the island. But the minute you buy it, because now you see it and you're looking for it and you're looking at it, you can see more of them.
Yeah,
So the
Right.
minute you go hunting for red
Hmm.
flags, you can find them.
you will find them.
Yeah.
That's
You can
Yeah.
find them. Meanwhile, you get a whole mountain of red flags yourself. Who don't have red flags?
everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody
That's
have
true.
red flags. But
Yeah,
if you focus on finding the wrong in me, you can find it.
it's
You
true.
can
Easy.
find it.
It's true.
And that's
Yeah.
why you see so many issues and stuff taking place. And, we've been at this for a very long time because the truth of the matter is we ain't listening.
No,
People
Hmm.
we're not.
still, there's so much inequalities, there's so many misinterpretations, there's so many gaps in
Mm-hmm.
our relationships these days, especially
Mm-hmm.
men to women relationships, that I know. I'd like to find out, and I don't. I love people for being people, and I say this humbly. I hope I don't get in problems for saying this, but I'd like to find out how different relationships work. Like
Mm-hmm.
if same-sex relationships, if y'all figuring out one another better.
You know what? I
It
don't
doesn't
know if
seem so.
that's
You
true
see that? So
either.
what that mean?
You know?
Somebody
It
gotta
doesn't
tell me
seem.
what that mean there.
Yeah, because I mean, based on, I mean, I'm just talking about YouTube as a source, but they have women who were in relationships with other women that are complaining about the same things that men complain about with
Same
their
stuff.
female partners,
Mm-hmm.
you
It's the
know,
same stuff.
just based on stuff I've seen. So
Yeah.
it seems to be just a human
Yeah.
thing.
It's the human condition that we have to address. And so,
Yeah.
without further ado, this brings us to our topic for tonight, which is actually a part two. And the part
Yeah.
one we did is Your Man Okay? And our guest was Dr. Sean Knowles, who
Hmm.
is an amazing psychiatrist who focuses
Hmm.
on substance use disorders, but he really does, it's holistic. And he
Hmm.
focuses on men's health, particularly. He has a private practice in the Palmdale area. I think that is Roosevelt Avenue there, and
Hmm.
also practices at the Sandilands Rehabilitation Center. And he will be partnering with us at MenSpeak to create a support group for men to have
Hmm.
a safe space to come and share. But there are so many other dimensions of how men and boys may not be okay. And I had the
Hmm.
privilege of crossing paths with this powerful woman, the Assistant Superintendent of Police, Indirah Belle, who
Hmm.
is the officer in charge of trafficking in persons. This is also referred
Ooh,
to as TIP. And
yeah.
I'm going to bring her up to join us on the platform. Good evening, ASP Belle.
Yes, good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
So happy to
Good
have you here
evening.
on Men Speak. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for the invitation to be a part of this platform and inform men of some of the social ills that's going on that affect them, the women they love, the daughters they have. So it affects all sexes.
Yes, it does.
And in terms of this crime, it looks like normal social interaction. So I am here today to provide you some sensitization on this topic.
Yeah.
You would
Hmm.
know what trafficking in person is in terms of the legal definition. We will talk about the national law, also the international law. What are some of the signs to recognize a victim? How traffickers operate, and I would also provide you with some global statistics.
Okay.
Thanks again. And then
We will give you the floor. We'll drop back and allow you to do your presentation. Then we'll come back on and discuss with you.
okay, so what I would start, I like to have some interaction with my audience.
Okay, you
The
can
term
stay there.
Hey.
trafficking in person, has anybody heard of it? What have you heard of it, if you did?
I have heard of it. Um, I've heard it primarily from the perspective of immigration.
Okay,
I've also heard of it from the perspective of women who come to this country and their passports are seized and
right,
they're forced into illegal activities.
right.
But I have only heard it focused on women. I haven't heard anything in connection with men as being the victims in relation to that.
Right. Yeah. So men are victims of this crime. It is perpetrated by men. In some regards,
Mm,
of course, they are victimized. So,
yes.
anybody else has any comments or what they've heard? Oh, but before I go, in terms of the immigration part of it, what have you heard, sir?
Well, it's primarily in relation to people from Haiti, for example, who are either moving through the country to get to the United States, or here, or coming to the Bahamas as a final destination. That's pretty much the extent of it from that perspective. From the other perspective, it actually was through announcements through government public relations, in terms of sensitizing the Bahamian public as to what's happening in relation to women who may be here and the conditions that they're in. That's pretty much all I really know about it.
So when you talk about a public service announcement, it was a talk show or just they were on the radio discussing the topic, or?
It was definitely something that was on radio.
Okay.
And they spoke about specifically about women who have come here from primarily Latin American countries.
Right. Okay. Awesome.
Who are, yeah.
So that
I've
means
seen
you've
signs
been.
at the airport. I've seen signs at the airport and giving tips on what to look for in the event someone may be a victim of being trafficked.
Awesome.
That's the right verbiage to use, but
Yes.
knowing what to look for.
Okay.
I've seen those signs at the airport.
Right. Awesome. What about you, Mr. Simeon? Have you
Well, I
heard
mean,
it's trafficking a person or human trafficking? I think that's the American version.
yeah. So yeah, sex trafficking, labor
Yes. Okay.
issues, people that are here from all parts, Asia, Latin America, Haiti, different parts in the region, who become enslaved in the fact that they can't maneuver, they can't move around, passports are taken, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And, you get a sort of sense of well-being portrayed, but it's not, because, people may, for example, have a housekeeping job. But as a housekeeper, they can't travel. They have minimum connections with their family, etc., etc. That sort of stuff.
So all of you have described, some of the things that manifest in trafficking in person. But of course, I hope at the end of the day, with this presentation, you are even more clearer about how it manifests in society. So I will just, okay, so trafficking in persons is the second largest organized crime. So it is a crime, of course, and it's after illegal drugs and just before illegal firearms. So this criminal enterprise is estimated to produce $150 billion per year. And it is estimated that 24.9 million people are trafficked worldwide. So, of course, Mr. Oden did talk about labor trafficking, what he described earlier about people having housekeeping jobs. And, I think he sort of described how their movements are restricted. Of course, there is sex trafficking, or we call it sexual exploitation. Something else called state-imposed forced labor, whereby certain states, send their their citizens abroad to work, and they are not paid, or paid very weakly in terms of. So that is the global statistics. So also we see that 75% of that 24.9 millions are adult victims. That means women, men. And of course, it affects children, which consists of 25% of that number. And when we talk about children, we're talking about persons under the age of 18. And once these are done, if there's forced labor, they are forced to do sex acts or pornography or those kinds related, and they're under 18, it's called child trafficking.
Mm.
So, of course, we indicated that it's a global problem. Countries are divided in three categories: one, source, transit, and destination. And somebody described Latin American countries for the most part. Yes,
Mhm.
it has been that in most instances, when you see foreign nationals that are caught up or victimized, they are from those countries. It has been the experience of the Bahamas when we have identified victims
Mhm.
in terms of their origin. It is those Latin American countries. They are victimized more than any other nationality. You spoke about Haitians. That has happened. Jamaicans. But mainly when it comes to foreign nationals, it is person from those countries. But Bahamians have also been trafficked also. Okay, so it happens right here in the Bahamas. Yes,
Um,
for the most
I'm sorry.
part.
May I ask how is that happening with Bahamians, please?
Well, what I would do, let me just proceed.
Oh,
Um,
sure. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Time, and then I would do some of the explanation as I proceed, and then at the end, preferably,
Hmm.
I would entertain your questions. So just remember your questions, okay?
Okay.
But
Thank you.
in terms of the source countries, like I said, what they do is they look at the origin of persons who are victimized around the world,
Hmm.
normally where their place of origin is, and for the most part, is Latin American countries, Africa, in some instances, Asian, and in the United States. So the origin of the country where most victims are, it's called source country, and the Bahamas, for the most part, is a transit and destination country. So transit means people are brought in, and then with destination has to do with the fact that hey, they are victimized on our shores.
Hmm.
So, what is trafficking? This is quite a very comprehensive definition, and it's, for the most part, very inclusive. So, trafficking is defined in law as the recruitment,
Hmm.
transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of a person by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, deception, abuse of power, or of position of vulnerability, or the giving or receiving of payments or benefit to achieve the consent of having control over another person for the purpose of exploitation. And we did describe earlier that exploitation is for maybe sex or labor. But you have to pay attention closely to this definition. So some of the key things has to do with recruiting the victim,
Hmm.
transporting the victim, transferring, harboring the victim, and receiving the person. And what are some of the key things? By means of threat, use of fraud, forms of coercion. Sometimes they can use methods of abduction, fraud, deception. So that's some of the key things. So I know it's very lengthy, so we would further break down those terms. So when we talk about recruitment, according to the legal definition, recruitment is taking a person by physical force or threat of violence, luring by promises of opportunity that does not exist, or by
Hmm.
deceiving the person about the conditions required to take advantage of opportunities.
Hmm.
That's a loaded one. So, with this, force, threat to violence, luring, that's the deception part, by promises of opportunity that does not exist, or by deceiving the person. All right, so it's a lot of deception, physical force, threat of violence to either the victim or their family so that they can exploit.
Mm.
When we talk about transportation, it is any form of transportation used to move a person, often in dangerous and inhumane conditions. So there is movement by land, sea, and air. So it's
Mhm.
various modes of transportation. And I think, Simone, what you were describing is that the airport is one of those, venues that they move their victims. So we try to provide prevention material as, at different locations in terms of where we have our prevention strategies. So
Mm.
when we talk about transfer, is the handing over or transferring a victim from one person to the other. So more or less, as we go on, you'll see that okay, with victims, they are commodities. Just like how you have the drugs, just how you move the illegal fire, you're moving human beings. You're transferring them. You're selling them. That's your property. We talked about the control part of it, having control over. Harboring is the confinement, holding, or imprisonment of a person whereby the victim's movement is restricted or controlled. I think it's Mr. Hall what talked about they don't have freedom of movement, no interaction with family.
Right.
So that's what you call harboring. And receipt is the buying or selling of the victim. And of course, it's often done without the knowledge of the victim. But even if they get, we talk about this element of consent. If they receive consent or they commit the act as a result of threat, use of force, deception, it's still null and void. So the simple definition, it's holding or transporting people against their will, which is another key term. It's against their will. I know a lot of times there's much confusion about human smuggling and human trafficking. But as we go on, we'll clarify some of the differences and some of the similarities between the two. They are both crimes. In some instances, they are described as being transnational crimes. But I'll go in further details so that you can be quite aware of the differences and the similarity. So we talk about defining human trafficking, simply put, forcing people into servitude through violence or deception, and also the buying or selling of human beings. So, in other words, trafficking in person is a form of modern day slavery involving victims who are typically forced, threatened, or deceived into various forms of exploitation, mostly including sex and labor. They are the most common forms. So, men, see, we started out with men, so you should feel special. Men, women, and children are treated as inexpensive, expendable, and profitable commodities used solely for the purpose of exploitation, in most cases for payment or benefit. It doesn't always have to be money, it could be something of other value. So, when you look at this crime and what some of the ingredients to constitute the crime, as we say in policing, at the core of it is a violation of that person's human rights. And we know that in civilized societies, there is what is called the Declaration of Human Rights. So every citizen, whether they are here legally or illegally, is safeguarded with these, they call it universal human rights. So, what applies directly to trafficking in person is Article 4 and Article 5, which states that no one should be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all its forms. Article 5 states that no one shall be subject to torture or to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. So, like I said before, it's really at the core a violation of their human rights. So, with us signing on to a universal protocol like that, of course, it means that our national law will line up. And the Constitution of the Bahamas guarantee us certain fundamental rights and freedom as individuals, as visitors, as people living, visiting in the Bahamas. So, with the Constitution of the Bahamas, these rights are guaranteed under Article 15, which states that whereas every person in the Bahamas is entitled to the fundamental rights and freedom of the individual, that is to say, has the right, whatever his race, place of origin, political opinions, color, creed, or sex, but subject to for the rights and freedom of other and for the public interest to each and all of the following. So we are entitled to life, liberty. So that confinement is it violates your liberty, security of the person, and the protection of the law. So the Bahamas is also what is called a state party to the UN Trafficking in Persons Protocol, which specifically was organized to combat trafficking in person. So, seeing that we have signed and ratified this UN Trafficking in Persons Protocol, we have to also again align our national laws with some key components which we are obligated to enforce. Number one, we have to make trafficking in persons a crime under national law, which was done. Number two, we have to prosecute any and all aspects of the crime. Somebody talk about the withholding of travel documents, a work permit. That's like a specific offense under the Trafficking in Person Prevention and Suppression Act. So as we go on, I would give you more information as to that act and where you can find it for your review. The third thing that we are obligated to do is impose strict penalties on persons found committing the crime and provide the full range of human rights for victim of trafficking. So what that means is that with the protocol, the universal protocol, trafficking in person, and plus under our national law, which aligns with this universal protocol, if we identify a victim of trafficking, especially we said that in most instances in the Bahamas, the case is that they're foreign nationals. We have to provide housing. We would provide them to get examination by the doctor, especially if it's whether it's sex or labor, because when you're dealing with sex, it's treated like a rape situation. So the medical doctor would examine them and do a sex kit. And if it's labor trafficking, because sometimes, we did talk about them getting the use of force. So that means they might have injuries. Even if you're working and you're exposed to the elements, because you're a commodity, I am in control of you. So you're making me money. So I'm not letting you work in the most humane conditions. So sometimes that affects them, and they get seen by a doctor as a result of having experienced this traumatic experience. Because you're getting treated bad, you're getting tortured, all sorts of things. You've been lied to in some instances. They often have some mental health issues, and then too they lack bonding and trust, because in most times the use of deception and fraud to lure them as victims. Like I think you gave an example of those persons coming into the country seeking a better way of life, a better job opportunity. That's the promise. But when they get here, it's no such thing. They are forced into forced labor or sexual exploitation. They have to prostitute themselves for the benefit of somebody else. Okay. Okay. So the promotion and protection of those rights. So as a country, we have to ensure that these rights are protected, or the rights of persons being identified as victims are protected once they're not, once it comes to the attention of the government. So, like I said, this is the national law that aligns with the UN protocol that is specific to combating trafficking in person. It's called the Trafficking in Person Prevention and Suppression Act, Chapter 106. And of course, it came into effect in 2008. So, if you want further review of these laws, finding out more about the offenses under this act, about penalties. In most instances, penalties range from 3 years to imprisonment in life. Okay. And also, these perpetrators of this crime can receive fines up to $15,000. In addition to penalties, when we prosecute, we also, or the prosecutors ensure that these perpetrators pay what is called restitution. So these people are able to get some funding, as a result of the harm or the loss that they suffered while they were, enslaved. So misconceptions here, okay? Most times we have a lot of smuggling issues more than trafficking. But I would not say that in terms of what is reported. I would say that, okay? Because not because a matter is not reported means that it's not happening. And trafficking in person is a very underreported crime, okay? But in most instances, we have more reported cases of human smuggling than human trafficking, okay? And let me show you the differences between human trafficking and human smuggling. What are the differences? What are the similarities? When we talk about human trafficking, remember the legal definition? When you use force, threat, deception, that means that it's not voluntary. So that's a key difference. When you talk about human smuggling, it is voluntary. Usually is an agreement, is a contract between the person that wants the transport and the person who is doing the smuggling. Okay, so it's an agreement. But on the other hand, in terms of human smuggling, they are forced to do what they're doing. It's a force received against their will. Okay, so the second point, when we talk about human trafficking, it can occur domestically. Remember, I was saying it doesn't necessarily only impacts person from foreign countries. It affects persons within the Bahamas because Bahamians have been trafficked. There have been identified cases of that happening to Bahamian nationals. Because there's an ongoing matter now in the courts concerning a Bahamian victim. And we just completed a case where two juvenile Bahamian victims were trafficked. Okay, so when we look at this crime, yes, it's considered to be a transnational crime, meaning it could take place from one border to the other, and also the person is victimized here, but the person does not have to leave the Bahamas. They can be trafficked right in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. As a matter of fact, they can be trafficked right in Nassau, or they can be taken from one island to the other. On the other hand, when we talk about human smuggling, it is about taking somebody to another international border. Okay? It is a crime against a nation's sovereignty. So you are moving people in illegal ways to get in a country. They're not entering our borders with the right documentation. They're being smuggled. With human trafficking, on the other hand, some of the victims they come with passports, with the necessary work permit, and they are victimized. So you see the similarities and some of the differences. So, with human trafficking, as stated before, it entails exploitation of a person and can continue for short periods of time. I know on the screen it has long periods and even years. It doesn't necessarily have to be long periods or even years. As a matter of fact, the case with the two juveniles, they were trafficked within a weekend. Okay? So, with human smuggling, it's always an international crime because that's too, I contract you to bring me from Jamaica to the Bahamas. That's two international borders. So, like we said, it's against the nation's sovereignty, the country who they're entering illegally. And again, with human smuggling, it ends after successful border crossing. So once we made this agreement, you bring me to the Bahamas from Jamaica or whatever country, that's ended transaction. You go your way, I go my way. But with human trafficking, I bring you in to these borders to exploit you. So it doesn't end there. Okay? So with human trafficking, the commodity is the individual. It's me, I'm your property. You exploit me. On the other hand, with human trafficking, the commodity is a service of movement. You just transport me. It's a service of movement. So with smuggling, like I said, it ends after successful border crossing. And with human trafficking, it does not necessarily ends there. Sometimes that's where it begins, the victimization begins, and you are there involved in these kinds of activity for long periods of time until what we call you're rescued. So human trafficking is a crime against a person because of violation of their rights through coercion and exploitation. Just sometimes repeating so it could, zone in on the differences. Victims are not allowed to leave upon arrival at the intended destination, international destination. They are held against their will and forced into, like I said, maybe acts of prostitution, domestic servitude, or even both in some instances. When those people are maids in somebody's house, they have to do their domestic work and plus probably serve us, in terms of sex, being violated for sex. All right. But what are some of the similarities between the two? They are both profitable business, so they are for profit. And they both involve human beings. And in most instances, I know I have criminal network here are involved, but sometimes it could be a lone trafficker. They're not working with criminal networks. It could be somebody working, exploiting somebody else by themselves. And for the most part, it is not a crime, what we have seen so far, mostly perpetrated by men. In most instances, females are traffickers. That's surprising, right? Because men are normally blamed for everything. So, the types of trafficking, like I said earlier, once it's occurring to a person under the age of 18, it's child trafficking. And of course, the children under the age of 18 is forced into prostitution, the forced labor, it applies. And then in some instances, in some country, child soldiers, they are fighting in wars and stuff like that. That's a no-no. That's a violation, because if they are in armies or police forces, they should be 18 years and older. So we talked earlier about labor trafficking. In some instances, some countries still with this indentured servants paying off debt, working, paying off debt. Yes, we're in modern day, but some of these slave and slave-like practices still continue around the world. So you have to talk about the forced labor, mainly in industries like construction, um, farm laborers, fishing. A lot of them are often exploited. And of course, sexual exploitation and something what is called organ trade or organ harvesting. Okay?
Well,
Yes. There's a supply and demand for organs. So we'll see just how valuable these organs are. So let's go to the next slide. So just to give you an example of, how people generate profit. And these are statistics from 2018 and we're in 2022. So I'm sure the demand has gone up. So the value has gone up. So you have both corneas in your eye, and each of them is valued at 30,000. As it relates to lungs, 150,000.
well,
Yes. And like I say, these are all statistics. So the heart, 130,000. Liver at 98. And kidneys, you have two of them. So that's 62,000 times two. So there's no need to have low self-esteem. When you look at your valuable organs, okay? And like I said, these are statistics from 2018. So
Mm,
as people, in terms of organ dysfunction, sometimes they get ill. So the demand is there. So people go for surgery for one thing and wake up,
mhm,
went for a nose job and then have a kidney missing. There are people who are just about the money, the mighty dollar. There is no extent to what they would do to others to exploit them for profit. Or say you go for a drink with friends, somebody even befriend you on the internet, slip something in your drink, and hey, you wake up with a sign say, please go to the doctor if they tell you, or you wake up with this scar,
mm.
so that's just some of the things that
well,
people, a
a
fallen world.
sign that says go to the doctor.
Yes.
Well, humans ain't human no more now.
Not at
Jeez.
all, not at all.
She said at least they leave you with a sign.
Exactly. So
Oh boy.
what are some of the root causes? I heard these terms being thrown out there earlier. I think when you're having a discussion, you talk about inequality in society. Poverty is one of the motivating factor. People looking for better opportunities.
Mhm.
I mean, in the Bahamas, for the most part, we enjoy a relatively good standard of living, but that is not the case all around the world. So, what some of these people do is that they advertise these job opportunities. And even with our money being valued on par to some extent with the US dollar, that is not the case in the region and around the world. So people come to the Bahamas because, hey, they want to work and send money back to take care of their family. So they are lured, they're defrauded into these opportunities. Job opportunity seeking job opportunity is one of the most common ways that they're lured into. They use newspaper, social media, Facebook, WhatsApp to advertise. People are evil. They befriend people. Or even sometime a friend lure another friend to get
Mm.
exploited. So the abuse, when you look at the juvenile situation, dysfunction in the home, domestic violence in the home,
Mhm.
all of these contribute. Sexual abuse in the home make
Mhm.
people more vulnerable to these kinds of crimes. Unemployment factor, high unemployment. That's one of the reasons why, as a government, we have to try to keep our rates of unemployment as low as possible. Because you see, some Bahamians are leaving here, pursuing going other places for a better way of life.
Mhm.
On some sketchiness.
In some regards, they could be victims. I'm just saying there are no official reports. But just
Mhm.
how other foreign nationals come here and get exploited, if we are moving away to other countries looking for, it could be these kinds of people,
For
deceiving
sure.
about a job opportunity,
Mhm.
or the conditions of the job opportunity might exist, but what kind of condition you are being subject to? How do
Mhm.
people treating you? Do you have your freedom of movements? Are you being paid? Because sometimes the job probably value $5, they give you $1.
Mhm.
They paid for your work permit. So you're in debt bondage when you get here. That you have to pay back for the plane ticket, the food they give you, the housing they give you. I'm just saying that is the reality of some people, who are victims of this crime. When we talk to survivors or what survivors report around the world, lack of opportunities in countries. There again, civil unrest, war conditions, when a rule of law is non-existent, even high crime rates and stuff in certain countries, they don't feel secure to live and exist. So natural disasters in our case, look at Hurricane Dorian. So it puts people on different, to help people to lose their economic footing. They lose their house, a place to stay, their jobs. Look at the pandemic. So it's a lot of societal vulnerabilities that people prey on, or they lie about opportunities. These traffickers, sometimes they even force marriage in terms of getting married to people to deceive them, bring them over to another country. And when they get there, they traffic them. Or children being forced to marry by their parents in some countries to bring some benefit to the family. So the plight of a victim of trafficking is very serious. And that's why we are doing our part to sensitize the general public. Even I work closely with law enforcement partners who are there on the front lines to assist with the identification of these victims, the investigation of these kinds of crime, the prosecution of these crime, and other NGOs. As we go on, you will see who we work with. So some of the common job offers, because I said mostly in terms of they recruit them by offering false job opportunities. Catering businesses, hotel industry and maid bartenders, caretakers in the home, care for the children, the elderly, doing domestic work. Sometimes they recruit them, say, for modeling careers, what's supposed to be lucrative. Or they say, you're looking good, or send me some photos. Blackmail. I'm just saying, you have a pretty face, pretty body, things like that. So people working in bars and nightclubs, or we don't really have strip clubs over here, but officially we don't.
Ha!
You know the truth. So are some of those people dancing or stripping or, of their own free will? And I talked about the marriage situation or befriending people just for the sake to gain their trust, pretend to be, and we know that love is a strong motivating factor for men and women, so you could easily get caught up. When I was doing a sensitization training the other evening, somebody shared where they assisted a victim, but because they didn't know what to call it, when she described it, it was definitely trafficking. Somebody was lured from Jamaica. This person was trying to dating dated was saying that they are in a relationship. He had these gas stations and just painting this pretty picture, or I would say, as we call it, selling dreams. So the lady came over thinking that he was this person who he said he was, rich with owning gas stations, and the person catching the bus. you know, I'm just saying, and he treated her bad, caused her to prostitute herself, she was sleeping on the floor. And I think she couldn't wait because some of the conditions, like I say, in certain countries, it's poor. So I mean, that's like your Boaz or so, you're going to try to miss out on this opportunity. And then, of course,
Right.
more than likely, he paid for her flight to come in and things like that. Sold her a dream. She got here, like I said, he treated her poorly. And there was another lady that she was communicating with to sponsor her a trip. And she kept her number. And because she held that number and she called that number, she was able to escape from this gentleman. And then they assisted her with getting back. But if I receive information like that, I would respond differently because I know that he's committing the offense of trafficking. You understand? How about prostituting herself and treating her bad and things of that sort, victimizing her. So as you know better, you do better. So now when she see things or information like that come to her, she would know that the country is mobilized to respond and provide care and protection for that victim and also prosecute that perpetrator. So, who is a trafficker? Really and truly, a trafficker has no profile. Anyone can be a trafficker. Like I said earlier, men and women traffic people. Even sometimes, you have cases where persons are involved and they recruit their friends. Young women recruit their friends. So, what are some of the methods traffickers use, or some of the things that you would observe with a trafficker or in this situation? So, so these are some of the key indicators of how they operate. The list is, of course, not exhaustive, but these are some of the commonalities that we've seen, that they monitor, chaperone, or escort their victims. Because if you're my property, I can keep a close watch on you. We talk about what is called dependent relationships, meaning that, hey, if they are doing forced labor, they would definitely not pay them. Sometimes it's labor done for free, or the value that they're supposed to pay, they would not receive. Most instances, they have to provide a housing, food, and shelter for them. Just keep them dependent. Because if you don't have, I mean, this world works with money. If you don't have money, then what? And even if you came with some funding, that will probably be depleted after a while. You don't know nobody here. I'm just saying, for the ones whose social support was taken away, this is a strange country. Okay? They use geography as a way to displace their people, which becomes physical distance from your family, from your friends, from that support system. They take your ID. So it's difficult to return home, sometimes because you've been involved in criminal activity. Prostitution is not legal in the Bahamas. Or because so they incriminate them, say, oh, well, you've been prostituting yourself. The police will lock you up for doing that. I'm just saying. all these kinds of manipulation and things like that. But there are, if they commit offenses, there is somewhat of an immunity because, like we said, with the use of threat and force to do these things, it makes their consent null and void, even if they've carried out the act. Another barrier or method they use is to bring maybe a Creole speaking person into English speaking country, a Spanish speaking country, I mean, Spanish speaking individual into English speaking. That's a barrier right there again. I don't know
Yeah.
the language. I don't understand the language. I don't know the people. Barrier. So what we would do is provide translation services for these victims. Because when we interview them, it has to be in a language that they understand. So they withhold, we said earlier, their ID, their work permit, or other forms of identification. Sometimes they get the victims addicted to drugs or alcohol. That's a form of control, right there, or dependence. They probably give them drugs because they have a drug habit. So, like I said, they manipulate them with saying migration status because they could come in legal and then they overstay because they are confined. They don't have liberty to move. They don't have their document to go. So that's another strike against them. So they think that, hey, the immigration official or the police would lock them up. That's not the case. If they've been victimized and they overstay, I have a person from immigration on my team that will provide them with some status until we do the investigation. Okay. So, yes, so I'll just move along. That's clear, right? Okay, awesome. So, how to recognize a victim? Now, this list, of course, is not exhaustive, but it provides, again, some information on how to identify these victims of trafficking. So, number one, like I said, if you're using physical force, the victim will, in some instances, have visible signs of abuse, injury. Be fearful, because you probably beaten them into submission, or you see other victims being beaten. So if you don't comply, that could be you. So in terms of sex trafficking or labor trafficking, they work excessive hours. So labor laws apply here. You my property, you have a quota to make, you can probably service maybe up to 40 guys if it's sex. Or you can work some long hours to get work out. So the third point, don't have access to their own money. There again, that form of control. And we talk about maybe addicted to drugs, may have sexual infection. Of course, if you servicing all kind of different partners, people who pay in may not necessarily want to have protected sex. So you do run the risk of acquiring some sexual infection or a disease or even multiple pregnancies. So you might have to get multiple abortions because if you're pregnant, at some point you're going to be making me no profit. So you have to get rid of that. So sometimes they use cell phone to monitor and track the whereabouts of their victims. So it'll be more or less like receiving unexplained phone call, especially in the case of juveniles. Home in their mother house and just all of a sudden have to go do something, you know. So normally too, with victims, they avoid eye contact. And when you notice that other people are speaking for them when addressed, that's like a red flag. You can't talk for yourself. You grown. Somebody else have to interject and talk on your behalf. These things are little red flags. And even people who sometimes doing the interpretation, red flag there. So we would get neutral translators do not control their
Mm.
own personal documents or ID. We talked about that. And then in instances where children, they do not go to school, truant, missing school, absence. So all these things, like I said, the list is not exhaustive, but it gives some indication of how to recognize the signs. So winding down, because I know this would have been shared tonight, the presentation, but what my role is as I work at what is called the Trafficking in Person Secretariat, which is at the Ministry of National Security. And what my role is to coordinate services for victim. And like I said in the beginning, it starts from the identification of the victim, straight through to the care, the prosecution of the matter, and also right up to the care of the victim to when the matter is completed being prosecuted. And if the victim wants to return home or even be granted status to remain in the Bahamas, especially if they were victimized here. There again, that is certain privileges that the victims of trafficking are entitled to. And these are universal concepts. Once a country is a party to that UN protocol, most of the countries signing that protocol, their national machinery is geared to support victims all around the world. I think we are not, I think it's about maybe 198 countries around the world has signed and ratified this protocol. So the Royal Bahamas Police Force is a part of my task force. They would do all of the investigation as relates to sex and labor, or any kind of trafficking for that case. Bahamas Immigration, they are there. Like I said, they will grant the temporary status or long-term status is according to how is a case-by-case situation for the foreign nationals. Royal Bahamas Defense Force, of course, they are out protecting our borders. So they are out there. The police also have a patrol boats and stuff on the seas. And, like I said, it's more instances of smuggling, but even those smuggling interdictions are those persons are assessed for trafficking to see if they're being victimized in that way. So the Department of Public Prosecution, they work very closely with the Royal Bahamas Police Force to make sure that, hey, we can secure a conviction. So all the kinds of evidence gathering, they would assist the police with ensuring that the file is completed and we can secure a conviction. And then there's also the Attorney General Office that works hand in hand, because when foreign nationals are involved, we have to, in some instances, and some foreign national could be the perpetrator of the crime in our borders. So we'll have to work with other countries, and so there's a diplomatic process. And so between the Attorney General Office, Foreign Affairs, and also the Department of Public Prosecution, that we work together. If our victim choose to go back home, to communicate with them, or if a perpetrator needs to be extradited to the country, or if a Bahamian needs to be extradited to their country. And it's about mutual legal assistance and cooperation in combating this crime. The Department of Social Services is there to assist with the victim from identification. They work closely, like they're an advocate, because sometimes it's intimidating just to deal with law enforcement, as a whole. But you have a social worker assigned to the case, and they would work closely with the victim in navigating all the necessary services. And in terms of housing, food, so the basic need, counseling, they would work with the victim to secure that they get these services or the medical care, like I talk about. Um, also with training, if they are adults, we try to get them vocational training. And if it's children and stuff, ensure that they go to school so that when they leave or after being victimized, they can reintegrate into society and be less vulnerable. So Bahama Customs, of course, they are border agents. They help to secure our borders. So they assist with, the identification of victims because, where drugs, where firearm, human beings are moved to. All right. So we collectively work in partnership. Department of Labor, they would do the inspection at labor site to make sure that, workers' rights are being upheld. People are not doing forced labor. All right. The Bahamas Red Cross has been assisting with housing, the Crisis Center with counseling, and the Church of God is a faith-based organization, and they've been a part of our organization. They have assisted in the past with housing, and also when they go into the community to evangelize. So the more people know, they'll know how to connect them to the necessary services. Okay. And so, how do you report a crime? If you see something suspicious, you observe something out of the ordinary. So, there are several agencies that can assist. If you don't feel comfortable with calling the police, I'm just saying there's the national hotline, which is also facilitated by the Department of Social Services, and they are trained to receive and point the information in the right direction. And so that's 322-2763. And of course, like I said, to the top is the police at 911. Okay? Apart from calling the police too, you can have Crime Stoppers, which is an anonymous tip line. You can give information there. And that contact is 328-8477, or on the Family Island is 300-8477. Again, the Crisis Center is also a partner with this. And if you call you can speak to someone there at 328-0922. And of course, we would coordinate services in collaboration with them. And of course, where I work at the Ministry of National Security, 502-3300. And of course, the Central Detective Unit that investigates these crime is at 502-9991. All right. So I think that's the end of my presentation. And at this time, I would entertain your questions.
Trafficking and breakthrough. Good job.
Okay. I would also want to mention that, the Bahamas, normally, we don't be doing a good job in most instances, or there's always room for improvement. But I want to mention that, hey, in terms of our sustained efforts to combat trafficking in persons, we have been rated by the U.S. Department of State Tier 1, which is the highest rating that a country can receive for the last 8 consecutive years. So we've been doing a good job in terms of our prevention efforts, protecting our victims, prosecuting our martyrs, and of course, partnerships. So we're partnering with MenSpeak to do their part.
Good job. Good job.
Okay, so any questions?
I have a couple.
Okay, problem.
Pete, you want to go first?
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying the difference between smuggling and trafficking,
Yeah.
Great.
so that we can get an encompassing perspective on the challenge. We are tier 1,
Yes.
but do you have any statistics, something that can help us to understand the scale of the problem here when it comes to human trafficking?
Okay, well, what I need to do is yes, do prepare some up-to-date statistics and what I want to do, because really the machinery with trafficking,
Yeah.
the government got organized, like say from around 2011. That's when this interministry committee was formed to
Hmm.
coordinate efforts. And I spoke about the four P's really: protection. I mean, no, not protection. Prevention is key because you
Hmm.
need to sensitize the public, do public service announcements, do radio talk shows, and other sorts of activities. We have like brochures from time to time. We would go in communities, distribute them. So it's a host of other things that we do in terms of sensitizing law enforcement, other government workers. So that's
Yes.
one of the P's that we do: protection of our victims, and then partnerships, of course. You know, when you see the necessarily agencies that you need to connect with, um, you make sure that you grow your task force. But in terms of specifics, say for example, our rates of identification has been relatively kind of low, but it's we were prosecuting for example, for last year, for say 2021, there has
Hmm.
been a victim, a Colombian victim identified. Okay,
Okay.
with the previous year in 2021, there has been, I think, a Colombian and the two Bahamian juveniles. So
Hmm.
it's like in a given time, I don't remember our numbers probably exceeding like five in a given year, but we have been rescuing, they call it victims, okay? And like I
Hmm.
alluded to, it's a very underreported crime, okay? Because
Exactly.
of the nature of it. Sometimes the challenge is that persons don't self-identify as being a
Hmm.
victim. They know
Hmm.
something is wrong, but they don't know how to put a name to it. You understand? Most of the times,
Yeah.
like I said, it's been the foreign nationals. They are
Hmm.
not trusting of law enforcement too, because it's another country.
Hmm.
Sometimes they don't know the laws in the land would exist. You understand? Sometimes there's the language barrier.
That's true.
Okay.
So, do you feel as if it's that kind of a challenge, ma'am, whereby for everyone that's reported, there may be an additional five, for example,
I
that
like I
that
said, I
go
believe I
unreported.
don't have the exact statistics to say, but
Hmm.
I think we are on our way to do much better with victim identification through better training of law enforcement personnel to identify these kinds of crime, to investigate even the prosecution of these crime. In terms of
Hmm.
there's some challenges even with saying that with the but there has been convictions consecutively, because when you are assessed, they look at all of these things that you're doing, and
Hmm.
prosecution is one of the key components. And like at this time, I have like four ongoing matters. I had five initially because I just took over this position last year, January. So when I came into the position, there were five ongoing cases with seven victims. So that will give you a better perspective. And these victims, some were Bahamian,
Hmm.
and most of them were foreign nationals.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So, in addition, like I talk about victim care too, we do provide like a stipend, a monthly stipend for these victims
Hmm.
for their upkeep. So, if it's
Hmm.
an adult, we provide like I'm even given a budget for victim care. We provide like $400 and $200 for juveniles.
Hmm.
Okay,
That's
so yeah.
tremendous.
Yeah, so, and I know over the years there have been other kinds of identification of victims, but I do promise to do something full scale from the inception right on up to 2022, so you can see how the numbers were generated over the years. Okay,
Okay.
there
Thank
have
you.
been successful conviction almost every year. And like I said, with the matter in 2020, a matter with involving a Venezuelan victim was completed. That victim has returned home. She was also awarded restitution in the amount of $10,000. Okay, so
Yes.
I would definitely, and then these are case by case situation because sometimes, in addition to trafficking, there are other offenses that are committed. So
Hmm.
what I would do is also provide the the origin or the country of origin of the perpetrator, also what was ordered by the court. So you'll have some idea of conviction rates also. All right.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
yeah, just to say that, like I said, when I came in, there were 4 ongoing cases and 7 victims I had to care for or coordinate services for.
Hmm.
But there is also something called the trafficking in person report that
Okay.
when we are assessed, that is information by the issued by the U.S. Department of State of how we've been doing. Okay, I've just
Hmm.
received the new questionnaire, so it's in a questionnaire form of how they assess, and I'll have to provide that. But I,
Okay.
as the task force, I would want to, with my leadership, produce an annual report so that
Hmm.
people can have an idea what was some of the activities was going on. Because I've really, I mean, I think the key with this is for people to have a greater understanding and appreciation of how the crime is defined. What are some of the indicators? We have been doing some of that, but I don't think it's sufficient so that more
Yes.
people are able to, hey, identify, call when they see something.
Hmm.
I hope that satisfy your answer in terms of the statistics part.
It's great. It's tremendous. One thing I'll throw out there. I used to work in one of the hotels,
Right.
and
Yes.
there was this person that was really a guest. They were really kind, really kind person, of Middle Eastern descent, and
Is it Middle
we're
Eastern?
yeah, Middle Eastern descent. And we were just talking, and I was just getting into music and recording and all that stuff. And they were telling me, "Oh yeah, we got this great setup in such and such a place, and if you want to come down and record, we could do all that." But because we're in the Bahamas and so many people from all over the world come here, I also was really close with one of Celine Dion's managers, and I told him about it, and he said, "Give me a few minutes." And he found me, came back, stuck his finger in my face, and he says, "Do not touch that opportunity with a 10-foot pole."
Right.
So I don't know what kind of research he was able to do regarding these guys and where they were from and what their organization and setup was, but he made it very clear that I would not come back home if
Right.
I
In
went
some
on that trip.
instances, like you said, a certain, like you say, those Middle Eastern countries, I think in particular Libya,
Hmm.
they have been trafficking a lot of persons of African descent. Okay.
Yes.
And trafficking manifests itself differently in certain countries.
Please.
Hmm.
You understand? So
Hmm.
and it's relatively, like, to some extent, a new concept, because
Hmm.
I think it's just been around, say, when the UN protocol was established, the last 22 years.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
things were more galvanized as for countries to combat it because the numbers were increasing. And I think we
Yes.
still have a lot of work to do right here in terms of, our efforts to combat it. But it's a work in progress. Things are in motion to do something about it. And we've had sustained effort. Every year, I have a budget for
Hmm.
prevention initiatives. And like I said, for the coordination of services for our victims. And we're trying to train investigators more, judges even more, sensitize them, prosecutions, because we have a special prosecutorial team that prosecute for these kinds of crimes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brother Simeon, I know we've been hogging up all the space, brother. You have anything you want to throw in there? Your mic,
You muted, Sim.
you're muted. There you go.
Sorry, I was saying you ended up answering my questions directly and indirectly. So,
Okay.
this is obviously two quick things I'd say is one, this is why you shouldn't judge people, because, we automatically see people in immigration issues and we already think bad, like, oh, they come here for this or that or whatever, not knowing the extent of, these could have been people who were here legally that got caught up for whatever reason. That's number one. And then number two is the understanding that these things happen to men as well. This is MenSpeak. So, having an awareness of that, I think for the most part, globally, when you hear trafficking, you automatically, most people, I know I'm included in that, think women and children. Automatic.
No.
When you watch Law and Order, it's only me, women and children. When you see the papers and stuff like that, it's usually women and children. I know it's a lower percentage, but somebody like me is always the advocate for the 1%. We always saying, well, 99% of the times it's the men that doing it the wrong way. But okay, what with the 1%? Somebody got to stand up for the 1%. And so we have to be aware of that and be cognitive of that. And then finally, humans need to start humaning more. We are so inhumane these days.
Yes.
We may not traffic in humans, but we are dehumanizing people and causing people to have to supplement their income when we don't pay them, or we pay them a fragment of what we should be paying them, etc. So, you're a part of the problem as well. So you got a 1 acre yard, but you want to pay the man $50 to cut your grass. That means he got to go do some other things to supplement that income to help to send money home to his family, and we don't think about that. But we have to be aware of those sorts of things so that we don't inadvertently contribute based on all the information that you gave us, which is, I think some of it we may have known in fragments, but by you putting it all together, it gave us perspective. But yeah, we gotta pay more attention and look out and see and open our eyes and don't turn a blind eye. You can see somebody beating somebody or pulling them in the wrong direction, or they look at you like, I really don't want to go with this place and help you.
Yes.
But they ain't saying that.
Yes.
You can see that.
Yes.
But
exactly.
we have this sort of it ain't happening to me. I can mind my business and all these other foolishness. But if it was happening to us, we would want somebody to help.
Exactly.
And if you ain't sure, just tell the police.
Exactly.
That's all. Hey,
Exactly.
boss man, some man look right over there. Allow me to give a quick note there, right on that point. Today I was coming from a meeting from Tourism Simone, and I was coming down Market Street, and these two young ladies were walking down Market Street, deep Market Street, not friendly Market Street. They was going a little far. And they looked a little bit touristy because one was dressed in a swimsuit and the next one was dressed, in a swimsuit with some jeans on. One had on a swimsuit and a throw. I thought they were like, Bahamians coming home to visit. So I was like, oh, okay, they can be okay. But then I saw them reading a map.
Oh.
I was like, y'all lost. Y'all absolutely lost. So I stopped and asked them if they were lost, where they was going. Now they're going down Market Street. I'd say closer to Robinson Road than they was to down. Guess where they was going? Or guess what they was looking for? Industrial gardens.
What?
Exactly. That's how lost they were. But again, one that could have gone south because I didn't feel comfortable with them walking in that area. No disrespect to the people in that area, but two ladies using a map, obviously lost in swimsuit. No, y'all don't go no further down that way. So I stopped and I took them to Industrial Garden, and they were so thankful because they realized they were really, really going down the wrong way, etc. But again, you have your own intuition, you have your own spidey sense. We all can see when something isn't right.
Yes.
Now, it's easy just to don't want to be inconvenienced and say, you know what? I busy. I gotta go where I going. Or you could potentially help two people that could have gone catastrophically wrong for them.
Yeah.
Even if they just get lost to the point where they miss their cruise back because they had to be back on the boat for a certain time. So
yeah, that could have been a disaster.
Exactly. And then we have to always remember we are the face of tourism in the region. So that wasn't going to just stop at that. It would have been a bad reflection on us. Yeah. So we have to pay attention and stop turning a blind eye. I said at the beginning of this chat, we always know, we know these things. Yes. Everybody else see them with a map. Where you going with a map? Going down, walking due south on Market Street, looking for a industrial garden on the other side of the world.
Right. And like I would add to that, we all know, we see these foreign descent women in these houses, a bunch of men trafficking in and out. So
some of them, they have a neighbor, they have neighbors, they know what's going on.
Or
they, again.
Like how you came from the hotel industry. Hotels are used as venues for these kinds of situations. With the do not disturb sign, bunch of men for the most part, trafficking in and out. They're asking for extra towels, extra sheets. So it manifests itself in different forms.
Just say something.
At the airport with a stranger traveling with a little child. You ask them a simple question. You're traveling with your aunt, your uncle, or your mother, or something. Just sometimes simple thing. I mean, children normally say no because they're honest. Somebody transporting a traffic victim.
Yeah, there's a difference between being a victim and being a waker. So, you can tell when somebody is doing what they want to do as an adult. And then you could also tell when somebody is being victimized to a certain extent, if you open your eyes to see it.
Yeah.
If you open your eyes to see it, you could tell the difference. And, you could tell when somebody is uncomfortable, when on the surface, they may be smiling, but they writing "help me" in the sand.
Exactly.
You can see. You can see if you want to open your eyes, you'll see it.
And I think what I appreciated most about the presentation tonight is the various ways that it could happen. We think a lot of times, like you said, it's just sexual, or it's just not knowing the difference between trafficking and smuggling. So we're thinking people just trying to get from one country to another. But I guess what sparked my attention, being in the HR field, was the whole forced labor part of it, because I saw someone who went through that very recently. I mean, and it was a traumatic experience, and it wasn't, I don't think it was trafficking, but when I looked at the number of your stakeholders, right, that's a part of the task force, we all have to do our part to police and monitor what is happening in various industries and workforces. So you mentioned hospitality industry. I think all of us on this panel have been exposed to that.
Mhm.
But you said construction, and this is where I have a lot of concerns about how that particular industry is run from the employee perspective. And so I
Yeah.
know someone who recently had that experience. They responded to an ad here locally from another country, responded to the ad, was told they were accepted for the position and that the company would buy their ticket and all of that and get them here, but they would have to be responsible for their own housing and all this sort of thing. Now, the person knows me and so was mentioning all of this. And I was saying, from an HR perspective, I said, this just off the top, this is like some bad HR because
Yeah.
how do you hire someone from another country and only buy them a ticket? You're not trying to get them assimilated to the environment.
Nothing. No 30 days, no nothing.
No 30 days,
Yeah.
put them up in an Airbnb or,
Nothing.
you know,
Zero. You're on your own like Pat Boone.
like how do you do that? I mean, so to me, that it opens someone up to be exploited. They already coming into a situation to be exploited,
Yeah.
Exactly.
and that's
So
very
when
concerning.
right, and whenever you get these iffy kinds of feeling or information is brought to you, let us further investigate. If your nose
Yeah.
clean, your nose clean.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You
True, and maybe
understand?
I need to dig a little deeper and reach out to you
Right.
privately.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it looks something sometimes like just normal social interaction. But
Mhm.
if you investigate, then you'll see, you know.
Yeah,
And then too, employers may be inadvertently contributing to the demise of these people again,
they
like I said
are
earlier.
because
You
they're
know,
looking for
Exactly.
cheap labor.
yeah, because if you're getting the labor is so cheap, you
Yeah,
didn't realize by then here, I only making $100. I thought I was gonna make $300.
I was
I
broke
gotta do
home.
something I gotta do something sketchy on the side to
Mm.
make up the other $200. My friend, you helping out. You helping the problem. You're part of the
Right.
problem.
You
And
are
the
part of the
demand for
problem.
cheap labor.
Right.
Hmm.
It's the cheap labor,
Because
and
that
what you said
ain't
was so correct. I'm not working where I am. It's really tough. I really want to make
exactly.
a living. I want to do the right thing, and so here it is.
Exactly.
It looks like this golden opportunity that's fallen in my lap. Let me go run, do it. And my
Yeah.
thing is, and the hurtful part about it is the person came, got on the flight,
Right.
came, and then they got turned back immediately by immigration because why? You saying you come here to work, they didn't even process a work permit for the person.
Right.
You see? So
Wow.
they were
Hey,
talking
hey, hey.
get them under the radar, pay them whatever they was gonna pay them for however long to knock out a job or something that they probably had to get done. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Mhm.
now that person was traumatized because they don't get on this flight now with all the hopes
Yeah.
of making a couple dollars or whatever, and they get turned
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's a lot
And
of time. The shame too. Shame.
shame going back
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
home.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah.
didn't cross the borders.
Yeah.
Plus,
Or the
plus on
pressure
top of
of
that, plus
someone
on top of that,
claims.
when they do the advertisement, they show them couple pretty beach. And
Right?
tell them you could go to the
Yep.
beach on your day off. And you
Yes.
ain't
Yeah.
have no day off.
No day off.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
And you know when at the
Right.
beach.
Yeah.
Right.
Huh? And you
Yeah.
in the heart of the place. You ain't see the beach the whole time you was there.
And what
Yeah,
about the conditions that they live in under when they do
exactly.
provide
10 people
housing?
in one bedroom house. What you
Exactly.
talking about?
Exactly.
Exactly. And I've seen that
Exactly.
too. I've seen where
Yeah, yeah.
someone who was actually like you call harboring. Now I don't know if they weren't there against their will, but it was
Hmm.
obvious that they were there for
To
prostitution.
work during the
They were
prison.
like
Yeah.
renting rooms to them out of their
Yeah,
house.
yeah, yeah. For
Right.
sure.
That's what they was here for.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They were here
Yeah.
for prostitution,
Yep.
but you renting the room to them.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
yeah. They can make their money off of you now.
They
Don't
can
worry
make the
about that.
money. Yeah, like well, I mean, there's so many different ways we could talk about it, but I just as I was listening and thinking, where has our moral compass come to?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know about
it
that.
get burnt.
And
But
what really got me is the different ways that you can participate in trafficking is what I found interesting
Yes.
because I would think of trafficking as the transportation, not the receiving of funds or giving
Harboring,
funds,
finding them,
harboring.
recruiting them for
Yeah,
like a job opportunity or
Yeah.
other ways of luring them, buying them stuff. I'm just saying sometimes people are bought
yeah,
stuff and they say, "Ah, you owe me. You have to do some things to pay me
I'm
back."
passport. Boy, I don't
right.
know nobody
So
man who don't
I,
like their passport. I don't even want my mother have my passport.
Listen here, I ain't giving that to nobody to
okay,
hold.
Or what you
go
do
on.
for citizenship in the name of citizenship. What kind of
Yeah.
Mm,
sacrifices? You
Mm-mm.
see?
that's
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
but I
in
have to
line.
go because I've been to
Oh,
work all
All
okay.
right.
morning. But
Oh,
All right,
can I ask
Belle.
you? Can I
Thank you
ask
so
you?
interestingly,
much.
Can I ask you
next
one
time
more
I'll
question,
tune
if
into
that's okay?
y'all when I'm in the comfort of
Or
my home because it's rich
please.
conversation.
Okay.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
All right.
is. And
Nice.
we,
And I look
But
for
thank you so
partnering
much.
with you all males to bring the
Um.
message.
Yeah. Let us know how
Awesome.
you need us. Let us know how you
Yes.
need us,
Okay,
yes,
please.
and
cool.
certainly you are welcome to us and this platform
And I look
to.
forward for the
Mm,
in-person meeting.
Yes, absolutely.
yes.
Awesome. Good job. Speak it.
Yeah. Excellent
So
presentation.
much for
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank
coming.
you.
Thank
Thank
you, and
you.
please travel
Awesome.
safely home.
Right. Okay, I will. I don't even know how to exit.
Well,
But
I
listen,
will
stay,
mute
stay
you, and
away.
then you just leave the studio.
Okay, take care.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, gentlemen,
Wow. So this is
this
the
is
after party now, Simone, or what we doing?
after
What we
party.
doing? What we doing?
Boy, I know, right? You remember when we never used to go home? We used to stay
Right?
Never
on for an
used to go
hour
home.
afterwards.
Midnight.
When we
Yes,
first
man.
started this online, an hour
Yes.
afterwards we still on. But that's crazy.
Yes.
Yeah, I know,
But
Yes.
right?
I think one of the things this will be my closing part. One
Mm,
of the things that we have to do as adults, and I learned this from one of my friends who had some mental challenges, who was homeless and stuff. And
mm,
I've said it for so long, we have to be careful how we view persons that seem to be underprivileged, for example, because one of the things that he taught me that it took me a while to understand is that
mhm.
I know, as growing up in the Bahamas, for example, and you would still hear it today, especially from some of the older people, like,
Mm,
oh, I don't give them no money because they can buy rum with it, or I don't give them no money
yeah.
because they can do this with it. Well, you know
Mhm,
what? A person who is challenged with drugs, they're going
mhm.
to have to get drugs until
Yes.
they can beat that addiction in whichever way that comes across. And I know a lot of people don't like to hear this. They're going to get drugged. They
Mhm,
also need to eat as well,
mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
let's just say, and this is how he put it to me for me to understand it. Let's say a drug addict needs $10 to survive a day,
Mhm,
to buy food, to pay for drugs, and then possibly, they give their drug friend $2 to sleep in an abandoned house with them
right.
because these do them kind of things.
Okay.
Imagine if you give them $5. So now
Mm,
they only have to find $5 more.
mhm,
So that means instead of prostituting themselves, etc., they could hustle for that. So if
mhm,
you've helped them to maintain some level of dignity by giving
mhm,
them and not monitoring what you give them it to do with it. Because
mhm.
sometimes us sane people who have all our sense, I give you $100 to do something with it and you do something else with it.
True.
So, we have to be careful to make sure that we don't not see our fellow humans in the spaces that we walk in.
Mhm,
Because, there's a concept that says don't stare. Don't stare becomes don't look. Don't look becomes don't see.
mhm,
That's right.
And that journey is where a lot of us have disconnected with humanity
mhm.
because, you know, just because the person don't look or act like us doesn't mean they're not human. And guess what? This is one of the things that all us in this region have to remember.
Mhm.
besides the grace of God himself, it only but 1 hour again for anybody to be homeless.
Very true.
That's right.
Only 1 hour again.
That's right.
You could live in life again, an hour again could leave you homeless.
Oh,
That's right.
110%. And I've met people after Dorian in Freeport. I met a man living out by Arawaki before. He was living out there. I like, boy, what you doing out there? You see him like a regular dude. He say, well, chef, I lose everything in there again. And I live in here until I can get on my feet. He was living right in the gazebo out by Arawaki. And guess what? He living out by Arawaki. What is Arawaki? Arawaki is mainly restaurants.
Right.
And you know, this man didn't eat for a couple of days. How you can live out in Arawaki on Restaurant Drive and you ain't eat?
Listen, and you'll be surprised to know people who are coming to work every day who have nowhere to live, nothing to eat. People who are living on the edge.
You ain't gotta tell me. I see it all the time. When I do our soup kitchens and our donations and stuff, check the crowd now. You got people who actually working who's come out for donations.
Yeah.
Because that work money can't reach fast enough, and as soon as it reaches, it's gone, and you ain't got nothing in your cupboard.
It's gone.
You ain't got nothing in your cupboard. Sausage selling like hot cake in the Bahamas now. Hot cake.
Yeah.
Like steak in Texas. People buying up sausage and eating sausage for dinner and Sunday dinner and them kind of things.
And noodles.
It happened. So we can't judge people based on just what we think we see. When we see the immigration busing thing coming around and we see people in certain circumstances, we turn up our nose against them, but some of them people right there as victims. 110%.
Yes.
When these girls go missing on the weekend, yeah, some is go because they be in whatever. But then what? But they said who actually being captured.
Yeah, Jesus.
We gotta get more human in this place, man. Human beings ain't human being no more. I keep saying.
No, it's true.
We ain't human being no more.
No, I don't know what we've become.
All them ladies get way down in the bottom of Market Street. Nobody see them. And this woman in a bathing suit, Simone, and one of them throw knit things over.
But you know what probably happened? They probably was downtown and they asked somebody about getting there and they catch the bus and they get on the wrong bus. That's probably what happened.
No, they was walking. They was walking.
Yeah, but they probably got off the bus.
No, they ain't catch no bus. They walked the whole way.
Oh my gosh.
They was walking and they was continuing to walk.
Jesus.
I telling you, they was far. They was by where they was. There was that corner. I forget the name of the corner, man. This is the corner before Wolf Road. They was far. And you could see you walking with this big map in your hand. Come on, man.
Because I know a lot of tourists do that when they try to save money and they say, "Oh,
yeah." But you could see lost though, Simone. That's what I'm saying. You could recognize lost.
Yeah.
Because everybody been lost before. And ain't nothing like being lost in a place where you ain't know. Plus you going in a little rough area.
Yeah.
That's why I don't care where I go. I go right to a car and I got that Google Maps. So whatever going on in my phone, Jack.
But you know the advantage we have is our phone works in the States. Most of their phones don't work here.
Yeah, that's true.
And even if they have to turn it on, it's like $10 a minute.
Yeah.
So they ain't gonna turn it on, especially if they're using data.
Yeah.
That's right.
So we have that advantage. We could use Google Maps in our thing. Even if it's in an emergency. Their phones just to say no service here.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
You know, I don't know what it is about Mackey Street, but I was there on Mackey Street by one of the lights, and they had a couple coming by on one of those mopeds, one of them scooters. They told me they was looking for Yamakura Beach, and I look at them and I was like, "Who told you about Yamakura Beach?" And they like, oh yeah, well, we're looking at the map and everything. And I was like, okay, if you're
Wow, they
serious about
probably
going
think
to
it's a
Yamakura Beach, yeah, I think it's a beach. And I tell them, say, if you're serious about going it, just follow this road. This will take you all the way to Prince Charles. Make a left. Don't leave that road. Go all the way down. You'll eventually get there. But
Right,
when you get there, mostly rocks. Nobody could be on that beach.
right.
You might as well turn back around.
And
Go over PI.
go to a
Or
beach
go
beach.
Cable Beach. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? And
yeah,
they said thank you, turn right back around. But
yeah.
I have no idea
And see, that's a responsible way to do it because we're all ambassadors. When we see these people again, it's a difference
hmm
between you going to the States and getting lost and a tourist coming here and getting lost and potentially getting into issues. Because then now, when you look again, the American embassy sending out travel notice and all kind of things. We
okay.
got to be
Yep.
careful. So, and we have to be aware of that. And that's one of the things that I hope, people could be more responsible. And on top of that, be like Fox Hill. You know where the most clusters of Airbnbs in Nassau is? In
Listen,
Fox Hill.
Where you
listen.
lie, yeah?
And you know
Wow, I
why?
didn't know that.
Police period.
Why?
You know
Police
why?
for
You know
Yamakura.
why?
No.
Because they're very protective of that industry. As tough as Fox Hill could be, don't forget now, my mommy owned that Airbnb where they stand.
Mm.
So y'all don't mess with them. And so you'll see
Yeah,
people
yeah,
walking
right.
up and down in those areas.
Right,
So,
right, right, right.
and we have to think about the community of that. We have to think about protecting that because that's
Very
an
strong
industry
sense
that
of
we have to
community.
protect. We
And
gotta
there's
we gotta
another thing
start
you said,
being a little bit more
Simeon.
smart now. Huh?
There's another thing you said, Simeon. You said ambassadors,
Yeah.
and you are a culinary ambassador. You are a spiritual ambassador. Simone, from HR to singing to so many other areas, you're also an ambassador. And me and my travels, I'm an ambassador too. And in many instances, you are the country.
Yeah.
You're not your tribe, you're not your political party or your
Ain't
constituency.
nobody get with that.
You the whole country.
Yeah.
You are the whole country, and people will judge an entire country based on a single interaction.
Yeah.
That's the importance of it. So I,
That's
And
I
so
really
for me, instead of
appreciate
them
you.
getting lost, they gone back. I ain't asked them nothing. I ain't try to do nothing with them. All I did
Hmm.
was, make them feel comfortable enough to go with me. Take them to the industrial gardens, drop them
Yeah.
off, tell them how to get back safely, and that was it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Imagine what their interpretation of that is now. What
Oh,
a
they're
sick, this
getting at the
strange.
nicest Bahamian,
Yeah, exactly.
you
You know what I
know.
mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Hmm.
that is a far better outcome than, oh, we get lost and these people try to pull us in one house and this and that. And again, I ain't saying that would happen, but it could happen.
Yeah.
Even in life again, it could happen. I want to see it being letting lost nowhere.
Trust
Nowhere
me.
on
True.
this island, I want to see somebody walking into a situation that could be dire for them. And we have to just remember that. And as men,
Hmm.
again, soon ain't gonna be no men or women, if you ask me. You can't say nothing these days. But as men, we need to
Yeah.
speak up and make sure, be protectors and be okay. I ain't gotta know you, but I
And
can
protect
see.
yourself too.
Yeah, yeah.
Protect
I can
yourself
see.
as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Don't take anything for granted that things can't happen to you.
Exactly.
You
And you
know.
would want somebody to do it for your sister. You would want somebody to do it for you. So, put that good energy out there and you'll be fine.
I
So that's
agree.
it.
Yeah.
I just want to
But
close by saying Keith is absolutely handsome
I'm
with his
telling
bed
you, so
and his
fly.
mohawk. I
Yeah,
mean, the
bro,
signature look is shining through big time, big brother.
I know.
bro, I getting old, bro. This is age and stress
Yeah,
and
but
God
you
keeping me.
uh you
And God
you
keeping me,
you
bro.
you work hard for them.
No lie. No lie.
You work
I work
hard for
hard
them,
for
so
that.
you deserve them, and you don't cover them up. I know plenty. I see plenty. My
No,
friends are
bro.
like, when your grade coming?
Bro. Bro, I earn every single one of these, bro. I am never good. If I dye my hair, it's to make everything white. Real talk, no lotion, man. You know what I'm saying? I ain't getting
I know what. I see some of my colleagues. I like, what's happening?
Yeah, I see some things myself. I'd be like, whoa.
I don't guess, and I'm talking about jet shiny black.
Yeah.
No. It rained them now, they in trouble.
They ain't pull it off, eh?
No,
If
because
listen,
sometimes you know
raining them
it
now,
is
they in
changed
plenty
color.
trouble.
It is
Yeah,
changed
man.
color. I've seen some of them was changed color. And
I
then you
can't
look
do
up
it.
close, you're like,
I
whoa,
have
whoa, your
no
hair.
But
desire
Simeon,
whatsoever.
but Simone and
Can't make no sense.
Simeon. One thing. What I just turned 47 in October. I'm literally at the point of I'm at the point in my life now where one is about securing a strong position for myself and my family, and two, it's about helping to create as many opportunities for the people who could take that baton and run with it. I mean,
Awesome.
the Lord may grant me with 20 more years, 30 more years. I don't know. However, it ain't the Keith show no more. The minute you get married, it ain't your show over. You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? Your show over. So it's about balancing the family and the purpose.
Dope
You know?
connections.
Dope
Yes, bro.
connections. I love it.
Dope
Yes,
connections.
bro.
I love it.
Dope
And
connections.
deliciousness. Woo!
Dope connections and deliciousness.
Yes.
Whoa, dude, I just catch that deliciousness. You mean the food deliciousness, right?
Yeah,
Everything.
yeah, yeah.
Everything will be delicious.
Oh,
Well,
I just
whatever.
checking. I thought Simone was talking about me for a minute. I was like, wait, wow. Don't mind me, man. Don't mind me. I ought to order. Sorry about that. Everything
But
cool.
it's
Everything
been
cool.
real. I really enjoyed being with you too tonight. Keith,
Mm,
it's such a
Awesome.
pleasure having you back in the
thank
saddle, as
you.
they say. And we just
Thank
gotta
you.
knock heads and plan this live gathering and when we're gonna do that.
Please.
Adrian wants us to get together, so I'm gonna connect with you on that. Looking forward to partnering with Dr. Adrian Carter, another one of our originals with Men's,
Yes.
who will be doing a men's gathering here next year.
Oh,
He
beautiful. Yes.
He's reached his 5th year of hosting
Yep.
his men's conference, Empower
Mm,
Men, and
mm.
he would like to do his 5th anniversary program here in the Bahamas next year and partner with MenSpeak. So we are very excited about that.
Yes, sir. Dr. Carter.
That's excellent.
Yeah, he even got a doctorate and
OGs.
all while in this time period.
OGs. Man,
Yeah,
that is amazing.
yeah.
But
So
the
All right.
growth is evident, man. I'm really grateful for you guys. Like everybody is just growing. But
yes,
this is almost like a high school reunion in a way, you know?
yes,
OGs, man.
Awesome.
OGs.
indeed, yes, indeed.
Men speak.
MenSpeak, still here,
Hey,
going
man.
strong.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. We will
Thank you. Y'all
connect.
have a
Thank
good
you
night.
so much.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank
You
you
as
so
Peace.
much
well.
for tuning into the show
All right,
tonight.
guys.
All right. Later.
I could be sharing this.
Yes, please remember to see the good.
Hey, you have to see the good.
See the
Much love, Simone.
much love.
All right.